California authorities tonight say the person responsible for starting what became one of the most destructive wildfires in Los Angeles history is a 29-year-old former Uber driver with a penchant for French rap music. 9 months after the deadly Palisades Fire began, causing 12 deaths and more than $100 billion in damage, police arrested this man, Jonathan Rinderknecht, at his Florida home. He appeared before a federal judge in Orlando this morning. Authorities say he moved to Florida after starting a fire in Los Angeles on New Year's Day that eventually led to the devastating Palisades Fire. The criminal complaint details a timeline of his actions. It says that just after midnight on January 1st, he dropped off an Uber passenger in the Pacific Palisades. They say Rinderknecht then hiked up a trail and shot videos of the area while listening repeatedly to a song by French rap artist Josman. That song's music video allegedly shows objects being set on fire. Police say he then set a fire himself and tried to call 911 to report the blaze, but couldn't get through because he had no cell service. In a press conference today, the acting federal prosecutor in Los Angeles said Rinderknecht lied about his location when questioned by police.
During his interview, he lied about where he was when he first saw the Lockman fire, claiming he was near the bottom of a hiking trail. Geolocation data for the 911 calls showed that he was standing above the fire in a clearing merely 30 feet from the blaze as it rapidly grew.
Firefighters were able to knock that fire down, but authorities say it continued to smolder deep underground for days, and that when high winds hit a week later, those embers erupted above ground, igniting what is known as the Palisades Fire. That blaze burned for weeks, destroying more than 23,000 acres. Authorities say Rinderknecht told them details about the fire that only a witness would know. And they claim that his ChatGPT log shows he created an image showing a burning forest and burning cities and people fleeing the inferno. To break all this down, we're joined by Neama Rahmani, a former federal prosecutor for the Southern District of California, now president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers, and Rick Crawford, former battalion chief for the Los Angeles Fire Department. Thank you both so much for joining us. So, Neama, this 29-year-old isn't charged with starting the Palisades Fire per se. He's charged with setting a fire a week earlier. Firefighters say they put it out, but those embers burned underground. What do you make of this? Is it unusual to have a case like this?
It is unusual, Elizabeth, but I do think prosecutors will get there. We know the defense is going to attack causation here, saying that, of course, he's responsible for that January 1st Lockman fire, but it wasn't a rekindling. It was a new fire that was ignited, or it was the elements, the drought, the heat, the winds that caused that January 7th fire. So expect to see a battle of the experts at trial in this case, because that's really the only defense here. And even though he hasn't been charged with murder, I say that yet, I expect when prosecutors go to the grand jury to get an indictment, we are going to see felony murder charges, which, of course, under federal law, carry the potential for the death penalty. I'm not saying that's going to be filed in this case, but the exposure is going to be significant. We're talking a potential life sentence, maybe even death row. So that causation is going to be the key defense and really the only defense in the case.
Yeah, Rick, I'm going to get to you in just a second, but Neama, that was a question I had for you later on. I didn't, given the fact that 12 people died in this fire, it surprised me that they just charged him with starting the fire, not with causing the deaths.
I think they wanted to get him from Florida to Los Angeles right away. You can do that on a criminal complaint. Obviously, for a felony case, you got to get a grand jury indictment or you got to go to a preliminary hearing in the federal system. You usually go to the grand jury. So expect to see those charges. At a minimum, Elizabeth, manslaughter. 12 people died here. And like you said, one of the worst fires in California history, but probably murder as well.
Rick, does this also raise questions for the LA Fire Department on why it failed to fully extinguish that New Year's Day fire?
Well, first of all, that's a great question that everyone's asking, Elizabeth. And, first of all, outstanding work by the investigators. Arson is one of the hardest crimes to prove. This investigation was a joint effort between the DOJ, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, LAFD, and LAPD. And when agencies collaborate, justice moves faster. Now, a series of missteps happened prior to the fire on January 7th, including lack of, failure to extinguish this fire completely, what we call a mop-up policy. And let's just explain what mop-up is really quickly. Mop-up is just a critical phase of firefighting. It's ensuring this fire is completely extinguished by cooling hot spots or returning debris and verifying no hidden embers remain.
Right.
And it's the big difference between control and containment.
Did they not do that here?
Well, we will find out here in this after action report. That's going to be a key factor here. That's going to be coming out in the next 48 hours. And from what I got from my colleagues, previous colleagues in that at the fire, was days leading up to the fire on January 7th, they were still feeling heat on that hillside when they were removing hose off that fire. So we'd have to look at what day the hose were removed, but you can tell that there was heat, and it's not uncommon for embers to come outside of a fire line when you don't adhere to the policy.
Yeah, this is a common thing. I remember when we were covering the Palisades Fire, I was learning all about it, along with our audience, about these underground embers that can burn and remain for months, until they explode. And obviously the high winds, the incredible high winds were the spark here. Rick, I want to just ask you, because I'm sure you know a bit about firebugs and their behavior. There's some interesting detail in the documents that prosecutors released today about this man. Rinderknecht was working as an Uber driver in LA. His passengers that night, it was New Year's Eve, report he was angry and agitated. The authorities say he was obsessed with fire. He had all these images on his phone that were creepy. And then apparently, when you talk about this, the thoroughness of this investigation, they not only were able to geo-track his phone to know that he was lying when he said he wasn't near where the blaze began, he was right near it. He lied and said he was down the hill, according to authorities. But then apparently he went on his phone to ask ChatGPT, are you at fault if a fire is lit because of your cigarettes?
This is typical firebug behavior. An arson investigator, as you look at investigators, what they do is they look at the behavior of a person like this individual. And what happens is they like to watch their work. Lots of times they want to help put the fire out. They've had an interest in being a firefighter at some point and not be able to quite make it there. So he's exhibited some classic behaviors of a firebug, an arsonist. And just to show you technology in action, things like being able to geolocate him, infrared drones to map the fire's perimeter and capture the hot spots in real time, shows technology is one of our best witnesses. And as part of the evidence collection and then testing the hypothesis of the investigators, just goes to show that they were able to put together this thing in real time. They were doing this back in April. They started this testing process.
Right.
So it's taken them this long to get to this point, but they wanted to make sure their case was rock solid.
Super quick, Neama, what happens next in this case?
What happens next is an initial arraignment in court here in LA, grand jury indictment. He's going to be assigned counsel, and they're going to start litigating these issues with respect to proximate cause. Expect Uber technologies to be brought in. I don't know who they're hiring for drivers, OpenAI for ChatGPT. Everyone's going to be brought into this case. Lots of subpoenas issued. It's going to be a big one.
Good question. Who's Uber hiring to drive their cars? Wow. Neama Rahmani, Rick Crawford, thank you both so much for lending us your expertise. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.